conflict of these two. So that is called as synthesis. Synthesis is the result of thesis and antithesis. So Hegel believed that the idea is the basis for the dialectics of humankind. The dialectics of humankind explain the movement of history, the movement of history or the movement of spirit, for which the idea is the basis, according to Hegel. But after some time, Karl Marx disputed this. Karl Marx believed that it is not the idea that create the thesis. It is the material conditions of the people that create the thesis. So the material conditions of people, for example, the pattern of production and the means of production and the ownership of the means of production are some of the economic ideas or material conditions. They decide the thesis. And once the thesis is formed, there is also an antithesis for the thesis. When thesis and antithesis contradict with each other, that will lead to synthesis. The only difference between Karl Marx and Hegel is, according to Hegel, idea is formed, idea is the basis for the creation of thesis. Whereas Karl Marx believed that it is not the idea, but it is the human condition, it is the material conditions of the people that create the ideas. So the conflict between the conflict between the thesis and antithesis is leading to synthesis. So the chain of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. This is how the history of mankind moves on. This is called as the historical materialism or dialectical movement of history. Karl Marx is a great philosopher who has lived in the 19th century and who has analyzed the bad effects or the negative effects of capitalism. And he has discussed the evils of capitalism. And in these evils, he has identified that thesis, antithesis, and synthesis are the main instrument to explain the human history. According to Karl Marx, the humankind have experienced two economic classes right from the beginning: haves and have nots. Haves are those people who have the wealth. Have nots are those people who are suffering from poverty and those who do not have the wealth. So the society is classified into haves and have nots. So, right from the beginning of history, we have two economic classes according to Karl Marx. Karl Marx has stated that there are four types of society in the history since the mankind originated. The first society is called as the primitive society. In a primitive society, all the people lived together, they collectively led their lives, and they have all the liberty and equality. They have enjoyed fraternity, and it was an ideal life according to Karl Marx. So that is called as the primitive society. In primitive society, there is no social evils like slavery or domination of one man over the other. So this society has perfect equality or the absolute equality. And this society is the society that protected the lives of the people in a collective fashion. People enjoyed liberty, people enjoyed freedom, people have absolute rights, and people have collectively hunted and food gathered. They were in hunting and food gathering stage, and their means of production were also primitive. So this is how, in the primitive society, all the people lived a very happy life. But after some time, human beings have come to know about the private property and family. These two institutions have spoiled the goodness of the primitive society, and another society is established. And that society is called as the ancient society. In the ancient societies, there are landowners and landless laborers. That means the landowners are the masters and landless laborers are the slaves. So the slaves and owners are the two classes that were there in the ancient society. This is the second type of society. The first type of society is called as primitive society. The second type of society is called as the ancient society. In the ancient society, people have experienced slavery. Slaves were there. People with intelligence are called as the masters, and people who do not have sufficient intelligence and who have the quality of dependence are called as the slaves. So this is how there are two important social classes in the society. The first one is called as the masters, and the second one is called as the slaves. So these are the two sections of the society that were there in the primitive societies, in the ancient societies. So ancient societies are the second type of society that Karl Marx tried to establish. And he has explained about the characteristics of the ancient society. Ancient society is characterized by the practice of slavery, and the whole people are divided into two classes. One is masters, the second one is slaves. And masters and slaves are the two sections of people who lived in the ancient society. And here, the exploitation of one man by other men is started. The economic domination in the history is started in the slave societies. So, the principle of economic exploitation or the practice of economic exploitation is started in the ancient societies. This is the second type of society according to Karl Marx. Karl Marx believed that the society, the first society is primitive society, the second society is ancient society. In the primitive society, there is absolute freedom, absolute equality, absolute fraternity among the people. There is a collective living, there is collective hunting and food gathering and production. But over a period of time, the private property and family system has penetrated into the minds of the humankind, and the second type of society is established. This second type of society is called as the ancient society. In the ancient society, people have practiced the slavery, the system of slavery as a social evil. This is the second important type of society. And over a period of time, the third important society also emerged. That is called as the feudal society. The feudal society. In a feudal society, there are two economic classes. One is the feudals, the second one is the serfs. Serfs are nothing but the semi slaves. The semi slaves are called as the serfs. So the feudals and serfs are the class that have come in the slave societies, the feudal society. The feudal society is the third type of society. In such a society, There was, on the one hand, there are land owning classes. There are people who own thousands of acres of land on their name and hundreds of acres of land on their name. And on the other hand, there are landless laborers who do not even own a piece of land. So this is how the means of production, which is the land, that is in the hands of rich people, and rich people use it to exploit the poor people. And this exploitation of the poor people by the rich people is characterized in feudal society. But what is the difference between the ancient societies and feudal societies? In ancient societies, the slave has no freedom for the whole day and night. He has to live with his master. But in feudal society, a slave got some freedom, an element of freedom. He can own his family. He can work only during daytime. During nighttime, he can have his own family. So, relatively, an element of freedom is experienced by slaves. That's why they are called as the semi slaves. So, semi slavery is a part of the feudal societies. The semi slaves are called as the serf, SERF, serf. So, the slavery was called as the serfdom. Serfdom. Serfdom is not a complete slave society, but it is a semi slave society where the people who are landless, who can work in the fields of the master, who can work in the fields of the landowners for some time. And the landowners use it to allot a piece of land on rental basis. And they also take the labor, physical labor of the laborers on the base of wages, annual wages. Whenever the agricultural production comes in a seasonal manner, the production, the landowners used to pay the price or the wages for the laborers. So this is how the land owning class is much stronger in the feudal society. In fact, the whole Europe has experienced the feudal societies from 6th century to 14th century. In all these years of almost 700 to 800 years of feudal societies, all the countries of the Europe have experienced the feudal nature of economy, where the land owning classes have the right to rule the state. They are the rulers and they are the economic masters of their period. And the landless laborers who are working in the fields of the land owning classes were only called as the serfs. So it is called as the serfdom. Feudalism and serfdom are the two important characters of the Middle Ages, the economies of the Middle Ages. And this is how the Middle Ages are also called as Dark Ages, where the religion was very rampant and all the sectors of public life, like economy, politics, society, culture, these are experienced by, they are influenced by the religion. So religion has influenced almost all the sectors of the public life. So that's why it is called as the Dark Ages. The Dark Ages in European history from 6th century to 14th century. This is called as the Middle Ages. Exactly during this period, according to Karl Marx, people have experienced feudalism in Europe. Feudalism is a system of economy where the means of production, such as the land, is hugely owned by the land owning classes. They are called as the feudal lords. The feudal lords have different names. They are called as knights, they are called earls, they are called feuds. Feud means a land. So this is how feudalism is an important economic system during the Middle Ages. Middle Ages, there were monarchs, but all the monarchical power is influenced by two other forces. First by the feudal lords, second by the religious lords. The religious masters or the religious priests, like Pope and other fathers, they have influenced the rulers. Secondly, the kings were given the army, the standing army by the feudal lords. So feudalism has virtually controlled the whole economy, polity, society, and culture in all these societies. So this is how feudalism is another important society that Karl Marx has tried to establish. And the fourth type of society is capitalism. Karl Marx has given four types of societies. The first one is the primitive societies. The second one is the ancient societies. The third one is the feudal societies. And the fourth one is the capitalist societies. Capitalist societies are the fourth type of society that Karl Marx tried to analyze. Feudalism is ended in 12th, 13th centuries. Due to decline of feudalism, another economic system called capitalism has emerged. Capitalism emerged as a trade and commerce sector in the beginning. Later, with the advent of industrial revolution, capitalism has acquired a new form. So this is how capitalism is an economic form in which the whole economy is controlled by capitalists, and they also control the working classes. So this is how the two economic classes, the haves and have-nots, have formed into capitalists and workers. While the capitalists have the ownership of land, labor, capital, and entrepreneur, the laborers only used to work with the capitalists. So this is how the capitalist society is the fourth type of society that Karl Marx has analyzed. These are the four types of societies, four types of societies that are visualized, that are analyzed by Karl Marx. He has also visualized two more societies. Basically, they're the four societies of human history he has analyzed. And later, he has also visualized two more societies. One is a socialist society, and sixth one, the other one is a communist society. So, Karl Marx, the analysis of history is called as historical materialism. It has two words: history, materialism. Historical materialism. Historical means the changes in the history over a period of time since the emergence of humankind. That's called history. And materialism means how the material conditions, the economic conditions, the physical conditions of the people are changed from time to time. So that is why this his principle is called as historical materialism. So Karl Marx has given so many principles. The first one is the dialectical materialism. The second one is historical materialism. In the historical materialism, Karl Marx has tried to explain how capitalist classes have exploited the poor people. And he has also given us the negative effects. He has analyzed the negative effects of the capitalist society. The capitalist society dehumanized the labor, and the laborer forced to live in subhuman conditions with poverty and destitution. So this is how the capitalist society is a society which strived for the profits of the capitalist classes. This society is a society that existed from 13th and 14th century onwards and flourished till 19th and 20th century with taking new forms. In the beginning, the trade and commerce was its the form. It was called as mercantile capital. Secondly, it is called as industrial capital. Thirdly, it is called as finance capital. So this is how capitalism has changed its form, and it established itself and it emerged itself as a major economic system. In this system, money was used as investment, and money is sought to be used only for profits. Profits are the main motive of the capitalists to acquire more and more properties. So, the capitalist societies are the societies that have no concern for laborers, and laborers were economically exploited in these societies. So, one of the important characteristics of these societies is the laborer were forced to lead a life with subhuman conditions. Subhuman conditions of life is an important feature of this society. Karl Marx also called it as alienation. Alienation means the laborers have alienated themselves, separated themselves from the work culture, work instruments, family, and the society itself. So, this is how the capitalist society alienated all the people from their lives, and this has so many serious ramifications. It is built on the practice of economic exploitation. Economic exploitation is very rampant in these societies. So, this society is marked by economic exploitation of rich classes by poor classes. So, according to Karl Marx, these are the four societies that are there in human history. The first one is primitive societies, the second one is ancient societies, the third one is the feudal societies, and the fourth one is capitalist societies. These four societies have exploited the poor classes, the have nots. The society is divided into two types of people, haves and have nots. Haves are the rich people, have nots are the poor people, and have nots were exploited. But they have the consciousness that they are under exploitation. And this consciousness of the working classes against the exploitation made them to resort to class war. Class war is the third important concept of Karl Marx. In a class war, all the poor people have revolted against the rich classes, all the industrial workers, all the transportation workers, all the workers of the world tend to revolt, rebel against the capitalists because they are under exploitation. So they have got the awareness that the cause of their poverty is the economic exploitation of the rich people. With this intention, with this cause, and have exploited, poor people have revolted against the rich classes. So this is the third important aspect of Karl Marx. The first one is dialectical materialism. The second one is historical materialism. And the third one is class war. It's a war. It's a revolt by the have-nots against the haves, the poor people against the rich people. Because the poor people can no longer lead their life with all the poverty and destitution. That's why they tend to revolt against the poor, against the rich people. And with this intention, the poor people have revolted against the rich people. There are examples in European history where the poor people waged wars against the rich people. So, this is the third important aspect of Karl Marx theory. And who will win in the war? It is only the poor people that win the war. according to Karl Marx. Karl Marx says that it is the poor people who tend to win the war, and in that war, poor people gain the political power, and that political power is to be enjoyed by the poor people. And poor people establish a new political system that is called as the dictatorship of the proletariat. So that dictatorship of proletariat is the fourth important principle of Karl Marx. Karl Marx have stated that dictatorship of the proletariat, this is also called as the socialist revolution. Socialist revolution is the fourth important aspect of Karl Marx, and in which all the poor people, they win the war against the capitalists, and they liquidate the capitalists, and they gain control of the whole economy, and they nationalize all the properties, and they socialize the properties, and they create a new social and economic order. In a new social and economic order, there is perfect equality among the people. There are no classes. There are no classes. There are no rich class or poor class. So it's a classless society. In a classless society, people always strive to hard as employees. The government creates employment to the people. And the decision making on production, consumption, distribution, and exchange are to be taken by the people. It is the people with the collective decisions. They take the levels of consumption, the levels of production, the levels of distribution, and the levels of exchange. So these four functions, or are the economic functions, are to be performed by people. So this is called as the socialistic society. In a socialistic society, we cannot find economic classes. There is only one class, that is human beings. There are no rich people, there are no poor people. This is called as the classless society. And this society is ruled by the dictatorship of the proletariat. That's called as the dictatorship of the proletariat. It is called as the dictatorship because the proletariat or the workers, they rule the country, they use their dictatorial powers to liquidate all the capitalist habits, bourgeoisie habits, bourgeoisie culture, and capitalist classes in the society. Because the capitalist classes are always exploited. So the bourgeoisie class, which are also called as the capitalist class, they are only interested in exploitation of poor people. That's why poor people try to liquidate the capitalist classes, their capitalist culture, the bourgeoisie culture, and bourgeoisie habits, bourgeoisie traditions prevailing in the society. So, this is how the fourth important aspect of Karl Marx theory is dictatorship of the proletariat. Dictatorship of the proletariat is the fourth important aspect of thing. And the fifth one is the communist society. Communist society is the society where people enjoy the power collectively, and people decide upon the production, people decide upon the consumption, people decide upon the distribution, people decide upon the exchange and other things. So there is no need of a government, there is no need of a police, there is no need of any defense. So this is how people always have a system where there is no need of a government. The state withers away. The state withers away means the state simply disappears. The disappearance of state. This is called as state withering away. So this is also called as a classless, stateless society. A classless, stateless society is also called as the communist society. A communist society, all people have the same type of rights, the same type of freedoms, the same type of economic opportunities, the same type of economic development, the same type of opportunities to develop themselves. So these are called as the characteristics of communist society. The communist society is a society that is also called as the stateless, classless society. The stateless, classless society is a society that always enjoys the powers of the people, the collective decisions of the people. There is no need of a state. People have the habit of ruling themselves without the government. So, Karl Marx wants to equalize this society with the primitive society. In primitive society, also, there was no state or there was no government, there were no police at the time. And likewise, in communist society, also, people do not have a government or a state, and people have the power and ability to look after themselves without the government, without the state, without the government. The people can manage their own affairs, they can govern themselves with all their abilities. This is called as the stateless and classless society. So Karl Marx has given this idea. So all these aspects are called as the part of Karl Marx principles. The first one is the principle of dialectical materialism. The second one is historical materialism, where Karl Marx have classified the societies into four types: primitive societies, ancient societies, feudal societies, and capitalist societies. And the third important aspect of Karl Marx theory principle is class war. Class war, the doctrine of class war, is a war between haves and have-nots, rich people and poor people. In the terminology of Karl Marx, it is a war between proletariat and bourgeoisie. Bourgeoisie and proletariat. Bourgeoisie means the richer classes. Proletariat means the poorer sections, the rich classes and the poorer classes. They are called as haves and have-nots. So haves and have-nots are the two important classes in which the society is divided, classified. And Karl Marx believed that class war only ends the economic exploitation of poor people by the richer classes. So this is how Karl Marx has given the concept of class war. And fourth one is the establishment of socialist society. Karl Marx has visualized two societies in the future. The first one is the socialist society, where people can establish a classless society, a classless society with a proletariat dictatorship, dictatorship of the proletariat, and that is called as the socialist society. And the fifth one is a communist society. In a communist society, people always have a society, a society without a state or a government. That is called as classless, stateless society. In a classless and stateless society, in a classless and stateless society, that's called as communist society, people always decide the levels of production, the levels of consumption, the levels of distribution, and the levels of exchange among themselves. This is called as the communist society. This communist society do not have a ruling authority because people divided into syndicates, panchayats, or groups, villages. They rule themselves at the local level. There is no need of a centralized authority. That's why it is called a stateless society. And this society also do not require a groups. It reach two economic classes, rich class or poor class. That's why this society is called as a stateless, classless society. A stateless, classless society. So these are the important issues of Karl Marx. And Karl Marx theory also provides the freedom of the individual. According to Karl Marx, the freedom of the individual is very important because without the freedom, individual cannot enjoy his life and he cannot set his life priorities. Freedom should always be there with economic rights of the people. And he has also criticized all the liberal democracies of 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries that they can only provide the political liberty without guaranteeing the economic rights. That's why he wanted people to have freedom with the political rights, economic rights, social rights, cultural rights, and all types of rights without any exception. All types of rights should be available to the people and with the primacy of economic rights. Without economic rights, all other rights are not possible. That's why Karl Marx is a great philosopher who propagated the theory of socialism and communism. And socialism and communism are the two important theories. And Karl Marx is considered as the father of scientific socialism and communism. Karl Marx belongs to 19th century. He has written so many books. Among the books that he has written, Das Kapital. Das Kapital is an important book that explains about the negative effects of the capitalist society and dialectical materialism, historical materialism, and all other aspects. So, friends, this is how we discuss about Western political thought. In the Western political thought, we also have another important aspect called utilitarianism. Utilitarianism is given by Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill. Jeremy Bentham believes that utility is the basis for all the activity of human being. Human being always behaves, acts according to the principle of utility. If he has utility, then only he acts. So utility is the basis of all the human actions. This is called as utilitarianism. This utilitarianism is a great philosophy of 18th and 19th centuries. And this philosophy is given by two great philosophers, Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill. Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill. These are the two philosophers who gave this theory. According to Jeremy Bentham, utility is the foundation of all the human actions. And according to Jeremy Bentham, the state is a best state which provides maximum happiness to maximum number of people. The state that provides maximum happiness to maximum number of people is only called as the best state. The best state is one which provides maximum happiness to maximum number of people. And he has also given the principle of quantifying the utility, quantifying the pleasure, quantifying the happiness. According to Jeremy Bentham, happiness can be measured, pleasure can be measured. Pleasure can be measured with a principle called philosophic calculus. Philosophic calculus. Philosophic calculus is the method through which the pleasure of the people can be measured. So, based on the measurement of the philosophic calculus, the state should provide happiness to the people. And that state is an ideal state which provides highest happiness to highest number of people, maximum happiness to maximum number of people, greatest happiness to greatest number of people. This is the principle of Jeremy Bentham. Jeremy Bentham says the best state is one which provides maximum happiness to maximum number of people. And he also provided certain other ideas such as education, theory of punishments, theory of jail reforms to bring a civil society in order. And one more philosopher who propagated the utilitarianism and who made changes to utilitarianism is John Stuart Mill. John Stuart Mill is a great philosopher who has provided the basis for utilitarianism. He said, happiness cannot be measured, happiness can only be compared. Happiness is not quantitative, happiness is always qualitative. So, qualitative aspects cannot be counted, qualitative aspects can only be compared with each other. So, that's why he says happiness can be compared from one type of happiness to another type of happiness. That's why he says happiness or the pleasure of the people or the utility of the people should be the basis for the measuring the structure of the state and the functioning of the state. And according to Jeremy Bentham, the state is one, which is an ideal state, is one which provides greatest happiness to greatest number of people. So that's how he suggested about greatest happiness of greatest number of people in his utilitarian theory. Another important political philosopher is John Stuart Mill. In fact, John Stuart Mill is a son of another philosopher, James Mill. John Stuart Mill is an employee in East India Company, is a Britisher who wrote many books. Among the books he has written, two books are very important. In fact, three books are very important. The first one is Utilitarianism. The Principles of Utilitarianism is the book written by him. Second one is On Liberty. On Liberty is another important book. And third one is Representative Government. Representative Government is the third book. According to John Stuart Mill, happiness cannot be measured. He has deviated from the principle of Jeremy Bentham. Jeremy Bentham said happiness can be measured. But John Stuart Mill says happiness cannot be measured. Happiness is a subjective matter. It is not objective matter. We can only qualify, we can only quantify, we can only measure the quantitative things, but we cannot measure the qualitative things. That's why he says the qualitative things cannot be measured. And he says qualitative matters can be compared one with the other. So he says the qualitative things can be measured with one with another thing. And he says pleasure cannot be measured. And secondly, he says even the quality of certain pleasures can also be felt. And the quality of one pleasure is entirely different with the quality of another pleasure. So this is another important. That's how he suggested some of the changes for the utilitarianism. And John Stuart Mill has written a book called On Liberty. In his book On Liberty, he's a great libertarian. He wanted people to have liberty. With liberty only, people can have their fullest possible personality. That's how he wanted all the people to have liberty. And he says, liberty, without liberty, human being can be called as a slave. So to differentiate a human being from a slave, it is only the liberty that differentiates human being and a slave. And he says Liberty is required for every person. And the liberty of one person should not be a hindrance for the liberty of other persons. The liberty of one person cannot be a hindrance for the liberty of other persons. So when one person is excessively using his liberty, he is misusing his liberty, the state has the power to interfere in the liberty of one individual and make the liberty applicable to all the people. That's why he says state has the power to interfere into the liberties of the people. And John Stuart Mill analyzed the situations where the state can interfere into human life and the state cannot interfere into human life. According to John Stuart Mill, a human being always does two types of actions. One is self regarding actions, the other one is other regarding actions. Self regarding actions means the actions that are related to the human prosperity, human development, for the human pleasure, for the individual's abilities, for the individual qualifications, for the individual's enrichment. So this is called as self-regarding actions. In all the self-regarding actions, human being is supreme. Human being's liberty cannot be interfered. We cannot interfere into individuals' self-regarding actions. If the actions are related to one's own qualifications, one's own educational enrichment, one's own property development, one's own liberty, that cannot be interfered by other people. That's called as self-regarding actions. In all the self-regarding actions of the individual, nobody should interfere, and the state also should interfere into the actions of the individual. But individual also have other regarding actions. What are the other regarding actions? The other regarding actions are those actions of the individual which hinder the liberty of others. If one person's liberty curtails the liberty of other people's liberty, the state can interfere. The interference of state is justified. The state can interfere. The government can interfere if one person is behaving in such a manner that all other people lose their liberty. So this is how, in the other regarding actions of the people, if the other regarding actions of the individual, the state can interfere. So this is called as liberty according to John Stuart Mill. John Stuart Mill has defined liberty in terms of self-regarding actions and other regarding actions and justified the interference of state in all the other regarding actions of the individual. And he gave full autonomy to the individual in all the self-regarding actions. So this is another important thing. And John Stuart Mill also has written another important book called Representative Government. In his great book, Representative Government, John Stuart Mill has suggested that the political system requires some reforms. And with these reforms, the liberal democracy will definitely ensure the establishment of a civil society. So, for this, he suggested certain reforms. The first one is he wanted open ballot system. Open ballot system means people should come out of their homes and they need not have the secret ballot. They should openly say to whom that they have voted for. So this is called as the open ballot system. So open ballot system is supported by John Stuart Mill for a representative government. Secondly, John Stuart Mill also suggested certain educational qualifications for people's representatives. People's representatives need to have certain qualifications. So with these qualifications only, individuals can exercise their political authority effectively. If a person is not qualified, he cannot exercise his political authority. That's why leaders require some political authority. People's representatives, MLAs and MPs, or any public representatives, they need some public certain qualifications according to John Stuart Mill. And third one is professional qualifications. Professional qualifications, professional constituencies, functional constitution, functional representation. Functional representation means, according to John Stuart Mill, all the geographical constituencies that we have presently now should be changed as functional constitution, functional representation. That means all people should vote, and constitution constituencies are to be structured according to the professions of society. All the teachers should have some representatives. All the doctors should have their representatives. All the chartered accountants, they have some representatives. All the farmers should have certain representatives. All the doctors, they should have certain representatives. Likewise, whatever the professions that are there in the society should reflect the professions in the parliament. So the representatives of the peoples should have the functional qualification, functional representation instead of the geographical representation. This is the fourth one. And fifth one, he is also given an idea of public funding of elections. Public funding of election means the election expenditure of the people, of the public representatives, should be borne by the state. The state should only bear the election expenditure of political parties. And likewise, he has also given us an idea of plural voting. Plural voting. What do you mean by plural voting? Plural voting means now we have one man, one vote system in 20th century and 21st century. But John Stuart Mill says sometimes if one person is highly qualified, highly concerned about the people, and socially he is in a respectable position, and economically he is a strong person, his vote should be counted as four votes or five votes. So that's called one vote is equal to four or five votes. So that is called as the plural voting, the weightage of voting. So one vote of a great person or an able person should be weighed in terms of social, political, economic, cultural, and other parameters. And the vote should be given weightage. That's called as plural voting. So friends, these are some of the reforms, the political reforms to establish a representative government in uh, in his great book Representative Government by John Stuart Mill. So this is how political philosophy, political theory, the Western political theory has great philosophers. We generally have questions on Plato, Aristotle, Plato's ideal state, Aristotle's classification of governments, Aristotle's theory of revolutions, Aristotle's views on slavery. And during medieval times, there are also questions on the classification of laws by Thomas Aquinas, Saint Thomas Aquinas. And there are also questions on Niccolo Machiavelli, his depiction of human nature, and the suggestions made by Machiavelli to the prince. And we also have social contract theory of Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and Karl Marx theory of Marxism, and Hegel's theory of dialectics, dialectic idealism, and utilitarian theory of Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill. With these, some of the important questions, some of the important topics, you prepare well. And if you have any doubts, we are here to clear the doubts. Thank you, friends. Thank you very much.